Good morning to everyone. My name is Luciano Saso. I'm the president of UNICA. Welcome to the third UNICA student webinar on pharma and biomedical careers in Europe, organized in cooperation with the European Pharmaceutical Student Association. UNICA is an important association of universities. At the moment, we have 55 members in 38 capital cities. Not only in European Union, but also in many other important countries of Europe not belonging to the European Union. This series of webinars has the aim of informing students and young graduates in the sector of pharma and biomedicine in general about the opportunities you have after your graduation. This sometimes we know is not very easy for students to be informed about the different opportunities. I'm sure that the students participating in these webinars, they will know more because we are very happy and grateful to different experts from different sectors, presenting in these webinars, their experience and giving advice and presenting the different opportunities. So I will stop here to leave space to the webinar. And I want to thank very much, of course, first of all, Professor Josse Thomas, who is organizing with me these activities, is a guest lecturer at KU Leuven in Belgium and senior consultant at PharmaCS. I would like to thank Sibel Susan, member of the steering committee of UNICA and professor of the Faculty of Pharmacy at Ankara University, and of course the EPSA, the European Students Association, which will be represented today by Ruben Viegas, Vice President of External Relations. I want to thank all the speakers, and we are going to introduce them one by one during the webinar. And of course, I want to thank also very much the UNICA Secretariat and especially Laura Colò for the organizations of these webinars. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to give the floor to Ruben Viegas, Vice President for External Relations of EPSA.
Okay, good morning, everyone. First of all, apologies, I'm in my telephone because the laptop is not working. I think this is the new normal now. My name is Ruben Viegas. I'm from Portugal. I'm here representing EPSA as the Vice President of External Relations. We in EPSA will represent more than 100,000 pharmacy students around Europe, and it's with great pleasure that we have this cooperation with UNICA so we can also bring closer to our students these opportunities. Nowadays, especially with the pandemic, it's very hard for a young professional like us to develop in their career. So this is indeed very useful to have these networks and these chances to share these opportunities. Thank you, Luciano. I pass the word back to you.
Luciano, you're on mute.
I give the floor to Sibel Susan, member of the steering committee of UNICA and professor of the Faculty of Pharmacy of Ankara University.
Good morning to everyone. I am also very happy to take a part in this, the third webinar. It's a great opportunity. I believe it's a great opportunity for the pharmacy and also related pharmaceutical students. I find this platform very useful and important since the students, academicians, and very important pharmaceutical company managers and chiefs are able to discuss and share the experiences and as well as the questions and problems. So I'm today again looking forward to listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibel. And now it's a pleasure to give the floor to Josse Thomas, lecturer at KU Leuven and senior consultant at PharmaCS.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to add much more. I also want to thank all the speakers, especially because they for their participation and their willingness to do that. Just maybe I can add that we are negotiating with Springer Verlag to edit a book on job and career opportunities in the biomedical sector in Europe. And you will hear from that soon whenever that is finalized. So without further ado, Luciano, please introduce the first speaker.
Yes, so it's a pleasure to introduce the first speaker. Let me mention, first of all, that we will have a first session with 3 speakers, and then we will have a discussion at the end of this session. So I kindly ask all participants to ask the questions in the chat, because we will address them not immediately after each speaker, but at the end of the first session. So now it's really a great pleasure to give the floor to Daniele D'Ambrosio. Is a Senior Vice President, Head of Clinical Research at Galapagos, a biopharma company focused on developing novel treatments for fibrotic and immune-mediated disorders. Prior to joining Galapagos, Daniele held various positions in leading biotech and pharmaceutical companies, and he actually contributed himself to the development of novel therapies. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for young people online to listen to him, and he will give a talk on a career path in medical research. Thank you, Daniele.
Thank you very much, Luciano, and good morning, everyone. I think this is a great opportunity to share a little bit of my experience and the way we organize in Galapagos. Maybe it could be useful for you, some of you, making your decisions in your career. So let me share the slides that I prepared just as a guidance. And I think, as Luciano said, I have I'm currently heading the clinical research team here in Galapagos. Since 2 years ago, when I joined the company, I've seen this company growing a lot. This is a European-based biopharma company. Now we have our first product just reached the market in Europe. We are still mid-sized company. We have several sites in Europe. The main hub is in Belgium, in fact, and we have also sites in various places. But I'd like to share with you just how I got into clinical research, because now I'm heading this group of clinical research, but this is not where I started. When I studied medicine in Rome, I had not the idea to actually do clinical research. I had actually the idea to do basic research in immunology, and that's where I joined a research team in Denver, in the US, in the National Jewish Hospital, working in immunology. And then, almost by chance, I was looking for a postdoc position, and I found a postdoc position in Roche, again in basic research in drug discovery. And I joined the company, and then little by little, I was exposed to different areas of research, including clinical research. And when we spun out a small company out of this research center in Roche, that's where I took the opportunity to start doing development work. And then over the years, I basically got involved in clinical research because of my medical degree. To begin with, and also because of the, let's say, the forma mentis that you develop doing basic research. I mean, the essence of the research approach is very similar. And I went through various companies. I lived in various places. You have here some of the pictures. And currently, I'm based in Basel. And I think if there is one learning for me is that you need to be open to get the opportunities. You need to be open also to take risks sometimes in your career, balance your career choices with your family choices as well. Not always easy, but I think you need to follow your passions, and I think you'll be okay. You will be doing the right things. So maybe more now concretely to see, okay, what are the opportunities within clinical research? You need to keep in mind that clinical research is an endeavor that nowadays requires a multidisciplinary approach, because it's complex. We need several types of expertise, different types of expertise. So you need a team, basically. You need to be part of a team. You need to think yourself as becoming an expert within a team of experts. That's how you're going to work in clinical research. Now, specifically in pharma, the environment which I know best, the way we organize the research, clinical research in particular, is that once we have a compound, a potential medicine to be developed, we create a team, a project team that is basically charged with the responsibility to develop that compound into a medicine, into a new medicine, through various stages of development. I think you know all the stages from phase 1, the initial clinical phase, into phase 3, which are the confirmatory phase, and then hopefully you can get registration and launch of your product. The project team is charged with the responsibility to define a development plan. Within that project team, typically you have a clinical development team which takes care of defining a clinical development strategy, which means basically, or a clinical development plan, which basically means to define a number of studies or clinical studies that one needs to perform in order to understand the potential of your drug, understand the potential benefit, the risks, and eventually making this drug, in fact, something that can benefit patients. Typically, once you define the studies that you want to conduct, you then assemble clinical study teams, which are responsible for driving the execution of the clinical studies that are part of the clinical development plan. So it's all about teams, at different levels of teams. There's a governance also that basically takes decision with respect to what needs to be developed and how you're going to support the resources. You're going to find the resources to support the development of the project. But it's essentially the teams which are composed of different representatives from different functions. So we work in a matrix with projects and functions supporting the teams and the development of our products. And in the next slide just shows you what is typically the composition of what we call clinical development team. So that's the team that defines the clinical strategy, the clinical development plan. Typically, you have a leader of a team. So you need to have somebody that kind of has the leadership of the team, takes the ultimate decisions, what needs to be done and what not. But it's let's say, a leader among peers, because you have different experts at the table. Each one is a leader for his own area of expertise. So typically you have the leader who is maybe a physician, maybe a scientist with a background in clinical research. This person will have already be a member of the team before being nominated a leader of the team. And then you have different representatives. For instance, typically you have a clinical operation leader who is somebody that is responsible for managing the different aspects of the logistics of the project. Sorry, I think I moved the slide here. You have scientists and physicians who are responsible for clinical study teams that are represented within the clinical development team. You have regulatory leaders. You have somebody that is responsible for the clinical supplies. You have a clinical pharmacologist who is studying the pharmacokinetics and the pharmacodynamics of your drug. You have physicians that are responsible to ensure that you are treating safely the participants of the trial. You have a biostatistician, so somebody who has a background in statistics, to design the trial and also to analyze the data from the trial. And then eventually, when you go a little more, so you have also a biomarker leader who is responsible for developing biomarkers. So if you're interested in biomarkers, that's another area that one can specialize into. And then at the later phases of the development, what you have is typically you start to have people that manage the publications of the data from the trials and communicate with the medical community, with the external community, like medical affairs. So in essence, you can be an expert in many different things to participate and take part of a clinical research. What you need really to be successful is to be able to work in teams, and for that, I think you need a number of human qualities and attention to gain trust from your colleagues to be able to work together with them. And with that, I'll close, and I'll wish you in the next slide good luck in your journey, and I'm happy to take questions later on when we discuss your your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniele, for sharing your experience and giving such a useful advice to young people. And now I leave the floor to Josse Thomas for the introduction of the next speaker.
Yeah, the next speaker will be Olivier Kerckhove. Olivier qualified as an interpreter, but he quickly moved to the recruitment business. And he has almost 20 years experience now in an international environment of recruiters. Approximately half of it in the IT recruitment business, and approximately half of it in the life sciences sector. And now he is the managing director of Xplore Life Sciences in London, which is an international company, and with experience in pharma, medtech, and consulting. So Olivier is well qualified to talk us about job and career opportunities in the medical technology sector. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Josse. I will share my screen. So hi everyone, and thank you for having me on this very interesting webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the opportunities in the medical device sector as Josse introduced. Just a quick overview of the agenda. We're going to look at the sector in general, looking at what we can expect beyond, and some tips on skills and competencies, and how to build your personal brand in order to launch and kickstart your career in that sector. Quick introduction about Xplore. As Josse already mentioned, we're a global life science staffing and consulting agency present in New York, London, Amsterdam, and Switzerland. We've been founded 3 years ago, and we are dedicated to life science talent, as it says on the slide. Our objective is to help companies and talent with the future, helping them get ready for the future, and providing permanent contract and consulting services in very niche areas that will be pharma and biotech on the one hand, and medical device on the other hand, which is the area that we'll focus on now today. So looking at medical technology in Europe, I think most of you will know that there are three main segments of medical devices. The first being the products and the services and the solutions that prevent, diagnose, and monitor, treat, and care for human beings by physical means, standard medical devices. Then you've got your in vitro diagnostics, which are the non-invasive tests used on biological samples to determine the status of one's health. And then you've got this really wide spectrum of digital health, which refers to all the tools and the services that use information and communication technologies to look at prevention, diagnosis, treatment, monitoring, and management in general of health and lifestyle. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I think the digital health world is a very particular world in itself. We're going to focus a little bit more on the medical device sector specifically. And going on that actual device element, there's 4 classes of medical devices, going from a basic bandage that you put on a small wound, which is a class 1 medical device, and then going to the very complex medical devices, the class 3 medical devices, which are the stents and everything which is used, which is a lot more complex than a bandage or a pair of glasses. Now, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a personal reason why I'm really passionate about medical devices, and this is this is the product. This is an artificial heart, and maybe some of you have seen it already, made by a French company called Carmat. They recently in December got the CE marking, which means that they got European approval to basically use the product. And the reason why I wanted to mention this is to show the potential of a wonderful sector. There's 2 reasons why this is a passionate story. I think the first one is a story of collaboration and innovation in itself, of sectors who have, on the surface, nothing to do with itself. This artificial heart is transplantable. You can use it, but whilst a patient is waiting for a heart transplant. And there is a little turbine on the inside of this heart, which is made by Airbus, by the airplane company. Now, I found this absolutely passionating to know that there's an airplane industry working together with medical device. I think it's absolutely amazing, the advancements of technology and of science in this. And I think the second reason is the way the world operates, the way the nature works. The reason why this artificial heart business has a massive potential is because heart transplants are slowing down. There's less healthy hearts available on the market, funnily enough. Even though the technology and the transplantations are going really well, there is less hearts available. And the reason why there's less hearts available is because of road safety, funnily enough, because a lot of healthy hearts came from car accidents and motor accidents. And these accidents still happen, but the cars and the motors are a lot more secure and less people die in accidents on general. So I find nature so interesting, and which is this story that on the one hand, we have less human hearts available for transplantation, but then again, as humans, we are capable to come up with a solution to help people wait just that little bit longer until they get a proper heart transplantation going forward. And I think it's one of those stories which I really enjoy talking about when I speak to people, because it shows the potential of human beings and the potential of science. Looking at some key numbers in Europe, I think it's always interesting to know what the market is like. We've got 500,000 medical technologies. It's actually the second highest patent applications in Europe. There's a little bit more on the marketing side, but there's a huge amount of innovation and R&D going on, which gives us a market of about 32,000 companies. Now, what's interesting in that is that 95% of those companies have less than 50 people. So it's an SME, a small and medium-sized enterprise market with a lot of people working for smaller businesses, doing great work altogether, but it gives you a slightly different view of the labor market. And it creates about 730,000 employees against 795,000 in the pharmaceutical industry. So the difference is not very big. Now, this does not include the actual digital health, all the IT and the technology, which obviously gives even a bigger market for people with interest in tech and interest in life science. In terms of regions, I think this makes sense, but it's always interesting to see that Germany, France, and the UK, biggest countries in Europe, are the top three countries where people are employed by medical device companies, followed by Italy and Switzerland. Switzerland being the highest number of medical device jobs per capita. So there's a lot of innovation going on in Switzerland. And if we look at the actual medical device companies, these are the biggest medical device companies based in revenue. You can see that, there's some really known names, maybe for some of you, a couple of less known names, but there's these companies obviously represent the big chunk of the employment, where the top 5 areas where medical devices are going to be focused on will be the IVD, everything related to imaging, scanning, MRIs, etc., orthopedics, and then cardiology as a top 5 sector. When I look at 2021, a lot has been written, obviously, and a lot is still being written about the trends going forward. I think overall the healthcare sector had a lot of frontline attention, let's be honest, in the last couple of months. And the medical device sector in itself has helped us through this crisis through PPE, diagnostics, and the ventilators that kept patients in intensive care alive. But like in everything, the more a sector is in the spotlight, the more regulation becomes a bit of a thing. People are looking at what's going on exactly. They want to make sure that everything is safe. Already in Europe, you had a big evolution of the regulatory environment in itself with the medical device regulation, or MDR, and the IVDR, who represented the true shift in process, which creates a lot of activity on the labor market. But what we see now is that a lot of companies have filed emergency use authorizations, or EUAs, who are crucial to find quick solutions to this crisis, mostly on the diagnostic side. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Supply chain, I think we talk about it on the news every single time. Capacity planning is going to be key for companies to to follow and to cope up with demand. And despite the medical device being a little bit slower on the R&D and science this year, because some of the products they work on might not have been as essential, we will see a big boost in R&D and science going forward. Especially now the collaboration, the flexibility and the agility that we found. We developed a vaccine in record time. That collaboration piece is definitely going to trigger companies to work together or to come up with new ideas and to really get them going. And then last but not least is the power of tech and technology, data, artificial intelligence, machine learning. It will only become bigger. They will trigger major advancements in drug discovery, diagnostics, imaging, mobile computing and wearables, where the artificial intelligence is going to become more reliable, more accurate, and it's going to be more efficient in order to get better results going forward. Now, if you look at the skills and competencies that we see within our industry, what we basically focus on more, there's about 4 families of key roles that we focus on. First one being the R&D engineering bit, where we basically work on the development of the product from early stage up and before it goes into production. We're looking at product management, which is more on the actual product development side, hardware design. Clinical research is becoming increasingly important because we need a lot more clinical research on medical devices further to the implementation of MDR and IPDR. And then it goes into the compliance and the regulatory side, which I think we've got another speaker talking about a little bit more in depth. And then the quality assurance, which in the production process guarantees that the product that comes out will be the actual right product and it's done in the proper way. And a little bit of attention, which gets an area which get a lot of attention now is supplier quality. Funnily enough, I'm going back to my analogies with the airplane industry. In the airplane industry, the slightest little bolt which is on the airplane has to be validated. We need to make sure that that little bolt is going to resist temperature, pressure, etc. when the airplane is in the air. It's not been such a long time where we actually took a similar approach in medical device. At the time, you used to have prosthetic devices or whatever, or stuff that's been put into your body, and they didn't really check it too much. It was a little bit basic, but we're seeing a lot more that every part of the product, wherever it comes from, every little piece of equipment that's being used needs to be validated that it actually will resist to any pressure going forward. And then there's the sales and marketing suite, which is quite big, which can be interesting for people with a healthcare background in science degrees who might say, I want to stay, I really don't see myself close to the labs or to the actual product development, but who want to be very close to the customer. There's a lot of interesting roles there for people who really want to be speaking more with the patients, with the hospitals, with the care organizations, with the regulators at certain times, in order to develop the footprint and the categories, the different categories from the medical device business. Now, this is, I don't know, I'm sure you've been hearing about this. This is where we are in today, right? We're in a VUCA environment. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I mean, it cannot be more topical today. It's been around for a while. We started talking about VUCA when you had the Ubers and the Amazons coming in, challenging status quo. So I was asked by Josse to also look about what are the key competencies in that you would need. What are the mindset and the skills that you would need in order to be ready, to be future-proof a little bit. And we did quite a lot of research on that, if I may say so. And I think this kind of really summarizes a little bit what I think is good, where you need to think about when you're actually thinking about your career going forward. As you can see, it's a lot about mindset. It's a lot about change, about being adaptive to change, to look ahead, to be agile, to network and collaborate like you're doing now, to focus on customers. So I'd let you, I think the slides are going to be shared anyway, but it comes down to, what Darwin used to say, it's not always the strongest or the smartest that will come out on top. It's the people who are most adaptable to change. You might be very good one day, or you might be very confident one day, but 6 months later, the world has changed, as we've seen over the last 12 months. So I think look at these different mindsets and skills that you can have. You can't predict. You can't predict change. You can't know how to react in situations that have never occurred before. We're seeing government decisions being taken daily about situations that haven't been managed earlier. But it's about constantly moving on, and moving upwards. That will make this an impact on your career. Now, on the personal branding, and I think for students this is very much important. It is important to brand yourself personally. Now, some people will be more confident than others. I would truly recommend you to Google yourself, because that's what recruiters do. They kind of Google the people that they hire. Be sure that you are sure what you communicate on whatever social media. And you don't have to be a influencer in social media. It doesn't have to be like that. But it is, if you want to have the opportunity, you need to make yourself noticed. I think that's the key. If you stay hidden, it's going to be difficult for people to find you. But I mean, let's make sure that people have a very clear understanding on what you stand for. And if they do a quick Google search about yourself, yeah, it might be advisable not to have too many compromising material which is online, because that can actually slow your career down. It's not the end of the world, but it can slow your career down. LinkedIn in itself is a really good tool for that. It's being used by most of the recruiters like myself who work for recruitment agencies, but also recruiters who are on the industry side. So connecting as a student with people in companies, they will always accept you. They will always be able to help you. They'll always be very happy to support you if you have a question. And that's just one simple tip that you can do right now to every person that you look up to in any company. Connect with them in LinkedIn, and you will see they will be able to help you if you ask them. And as a final note, some tips as young people going forward. This is the golden circle, finding out your why. It's really important now. You have a chance to really think about why you want to do what you want to do. What do you want to achieve in life? How do you want to achieve it is less important to the big why. Why do you want to do what you do? What's your actual purpose? Because that is going to give you the energy to get up every day, to challenge yourself, and to be that person that develops a career, which is going to be very different than what you initially maybe imagined yourself. But if you have your why right, everything is not going to be a job. It's going to be more a passion than anything else. And then next to that is focus on the things that you can control and the things that matter. We can focus on a lot of things in life, but try on a professional side, focus on what matters and what you actually can influence yourself. With a final note from Warren Buffett, and this is not about money and about actual monetary investment, but it is about the time that you invest in yourself. Study, learn as much as you can. The more you invest in yourself, the better you're going to come out. And that was it for me. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let us know at the end of this session.
Thank you, Olivier, for this very interesting and comprehensive presentation. And now to Luciano, back for the last speaker of this session.
Thank you very much. So now it's a pleasure to give the floor to Mónica Serrano from Novo Nordisk. Mónica graduated in pharmacy from Competencies University of Madrid, and then she also got another degree in regulatory affairs later on. And then she joined the Novo Nordisk in 2015 as a safety professional in the regulatory and safety department. And she currently holds the position of interim regulatory and safety manager. And she will give a talk on career opportunities in regulatory affairs. Please, Mónica, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are and your families are good. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Professor Saso for giving me this opportunity to participate in this webinar. The objective of my presentation is to show what we do in a regulatory department of a pharmaceutical company, and all of the opportunity that opens to work in it. Okay, I divide my time in these main 4 points. Something about me, a general view of working in regulatory department, the requirements to get to work in the department, and finally, to show the opportunities that there are inside my company for an individual development. This is a short description of my career. I'm a pharmacist. I studied at Competencies University in Madrid. After I worked for several years in clinical analysis laboratory, and one day I changed to the pharmaceutical world through a master degree in regulatory affairs, and then I started in Novo Nordisk, Spain, in 2015. About Novo Nordisk, I'm going to tell you that it's a Danish company with headquarters in Copenhagen. Novo Nordisk developed medicine for diabetes, obesity, hemophilia, and disorders of growth. In general, the start of the registration of a medicine begins once a molecule has developed and it shows good results in clinical trials. The company decides to start the registration to be able to market the molecule. The information on the safety, efficacy, and quality of the medicine obtained during the development is prepared in a dossier, and it is submitted to the competent health authorities. In Europe, there are 3 procedures to submit the dossier. Centralized, with a single application and a single authorization for all member states, same trade name in all countries, and is involved European Medicine Agency. Second one, mutual recognition or decentralized, simultaneous evaluation in several member states for the authorization of the medicine, and they may have different trade names. And the third procedure is national, is in a single state, one application to the local agency, for example, Spain, and a national authorization. It only can be traded in this state. Pharmaceutical company choose the procedure to submit their products, or except for several medicines that is mandatory to use centralized procedure. These medicines are from diabetes, chronic disease, AIDS, etc. When safety and efficacy have been evaluated, the medicine is marketed, and all the documents of the dossier are summarized in the product information of the medicine. That means the leaflet for patients and summary product of characters for healthcare professionals. Here you can see the main well-known health authorities that are in the world. First one, European Medicine Agency from Europe. The second one, Agency of USA, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Third one, in third place, Pharmaceutical and Medical Device Agency of Japan. And to say a local agency, I'm going to show you the Spanish agency. So that what we do in regulatory and safety department. So we are the point of contact with health authorities and submit the dossier of new medicines. But it's not common to submit new medicine every year. But there are more tasks that we are responsible. monitoring life cycle of the medicine since it has been approved to the end, it finally is it is discontinued. So it's very important to continue updating the information on the medicines registration. How can we do this? We are updating the leaflets, the labelings, or insert new indication in leaflets, adverse events, recalls the products, out of stock, etc. And in several companies inside the department,
I think Monica lost her connection.
So there is a technical problem. We hope that the speaker will manage to reconnect soon. You know, in the meantime, what we can do, maybe we can start to discuss the previous presentations, unless she's back immediately. Let's wait a second. Okay, maybe we can start with a general question to the first speaker. Daniele, you really loved your presentation, which I think was very useful. I know you are a medical doctor, and then of course in the teams that you described, I mean, I know that there are figures with different degrees, etc. These webinars are addressed mainly, but not only, to graduates in pharmacy, biotechnologies, etc. Can you please describe a little bit better the interaction of these different figures in the teams? I mean, what kind of positions, in your opinion, are more, you know, likely to be covered by, let's say, a medical doctor, or more today by a biotechnologist? As you know, there are also different types of biotechnologies, you know, pharmaceutical, medical, industrial, etc., or pharmacies, industrial pharmacy. I know it's not an easy question, but in general, if you can comment a little bit on that, I think can be useful for the people online.
Yeah, sure. Yes, it's not only, I mean, clinical research is not only for physicians, I mean, for sure. So we do have physicians. I think Monica is trying to get back. Or...
Sorry, there's a technical issue, I think so.
Yes, are you back, Monica?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you have to need to share the screen again. Then we just ask a question to Daniele. He is going to finish to answer, and then you have the floor again. Just share the screen in 1 second, okay?
Okay, I'm going to prepare. Sorry.
No problem, it happens.
Okay. Yeah, so no, I was going to say that, as I said, you know, you have different specialties and different expertise coming together. So typically you have, for example, when you think about a study team, when we run a clinical study in pharma, you have a clinical study leader that typically has maybe a degree in biology or PharmD, with perhaps a master in some type, or has gone maybe through experience in a CRO, in a clinical research organization, or maybe has done monitoring. Maybe some people start with monitoring sites for a clinical trial, and then gaining that experience and become, let's say, have the opportunity to join and to lead eventually a clinical study team. So those are non-medics typically in our company. We also have, well, I think you have also here, Leuvenand will talk about the importance of having someone that knows the drug substance and the drug supply, how to make sure that you have the supplies for your trial, and that's typically a PharmD, perhaps, as a background. And then you have statisticians have a statistical background. So very different. I mean, you can come to be part of clinical research in many different ways.
Thank you very much, Daniele. So now if Mónica is ready to share again, we can conclude the presentation and then we go back to the general discussion. Yes.
Yes, can you see my screen and my presentation?
Not yet the presentation, but I think we see now.
Can you see my presentation?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet? Oh, sorry. I'm going to share it again. I hope. Sorry.
Okay, now you see your screen, but not the presentation. You have to put the presentation. Okay, now we got it. Okay. Great.
Okay, now
Yes.
it's correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Can you let me know where it's like, have you seen the last
Go ahead.
one? This? Here?
We've seen that one also. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is correct? Okay.
Yes.
No.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, the technology and me. So only quickly to end very fast. Only to know, to show you the main well-known health authorities, the European Medicine Agency, the Food and Drug Administration of USA, the FDA, and other well-known agency is from Japan, and for example, a local health authority, I write the Spanish agency. What is the regulatory department tax? We are the point of contact with health authorities, and then we have to submit the dossier. So this is in general the regulatory process, but it's not common to submit new medicines every year. But in regulatory affairs, we have more tasks. We are responsible of monitoring life cycles of medicines since it has been approved to the end, and if finally it is discontinued. We must updating the product information of these medicines, the leaflets, the labelings, insert new indication, monitoring adverse events, recall of products or out of stock. And in several companies inside the department, we have responsibility in pharmacovigilance, reviewer of promotional materials, technical responsible person, and etc. So, what do you need? A degree in science, preferably pharmacist, chemist, biologist, biochemist, and a specialist postgraduate in regulatory affairs. It's interesting that this postgraduate has the possibility of internships in pharmaceutical company. Finally, I sought information about the opportunities in Novo Nordisk, which offers an individual development plans inside the affiliate or outside the affiliate. You can go to headquarters. And also regulatory affairs department gives you a global vision of the business in collaboration with other departments, market access, logistics department, quality, marketing, and compliance. So I think, thank you, and sorry for the technical issue, and I hope that this information has been useful for you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mónica. And now again, we open the discussion for the three presentations that we listened to this morning. I don't know, Josse, if you do have a question for the speakers.
Yeah, I would like to address a question to Olivier. For young graduates, be it physicians or life science scientists, what is the importance or the relative importance of having a PhD, having a postgraduate in some specialized area, having a second diploma in a totally different area, like, for instance, IP law or something like that, and for the different possibilities in the medtech sector, especially?
I think in general, it's always interesting to have a second degree. I think what you see especially in these bigger companies, the top 20 that I mentioned, it will definitely be something that they will tap talent from those PhD environments, and they will be very open and a lot more welcoming for people with a PhD environment. Now, what's very specific, as I said earlier, about the market is you have a lot of smaller businesses in there as well. So it really depends on the individual itself. If I think if somebody wants to have a PhD, then and is really passionate about something, you should 100% go for it. But in the smaller businesses, they need to probably accept that they might not be having the best PhD students in the industry, so they will probably accept people without them. But it's definitely an asset, I think, for a career, because it will give you choice more than anything. It will widen the scope of your opportunities, I would say.
Yeah. You already mentioned the medical device regulation and the IVD regulation upcoming, the medical devices for May of this year, IVD regulation next year's. Do you think that would really boost the clinical research in this area, in the medtech sector?
Yeah, I think so, because it's the rules are a lot tighter than they were before. So what we've seen, it's obviously been going on already for a while, because people have been preparing. It was supposed to come in last year, but it was delayed. There were a lot of companies who were not ready with their departments. There was a lot of lobbying going from MedTech Europe to slow it down a bit, because people were just not geared up to do it. But I do feel that the work that needs to be done in order to put a device on the market, and especially the more complex devices, is a lot higher. The work, the complexity is a lot higher, and the clinical research needs to be done on a bigger scale than it previously has been. So we've seen a big boost in demand on that side in the medical device companies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I ask again the participants, if any participant has any question for the speakers, please write it in the chat, and we will address it now for this first session. In the meantime, I would like to ask Olivier also another question. I mean, I also know I'm following as much as possible the development of digital health. I think this is really fascinating. Not easy, I think, for us universities, because the way we have been teaching until now has been a little bit traditional. I mean, engineering and pharmacy, have been completely different worlds until recently, and now, of course, we are encouraged, to work in this interdisciplinary, way. So I have a general question: what is your advice for universities, and also how you also can put together, I mean, in your let's say businesses, big or small businesses, engineers, pharmacists, biotechnologists together?
It's a very good question, and it's one of those worlds which are really totally on the opposite, because I remember a couple of years ago I was in a conference. It was a regulatory conference, and we were looking at all the apps that you have on your phone, who look at maintaining your health, etc., etc. And there is no regulation. There's absolutely no regulation, where submissions take weeks, months, sometimes years, and an application probably updates every 6 weeks or 7 weeks. So there's obviously a big challenge in there. I think what I would say is a good way for universities to get into that is to try and work on projects from the scientific side with startups, with companies who have the technology in mind, who work in a certain area. I think there's definitely an opportunity for universities to kind of partner up with those companies to open up an environment which is completely unknown for some of us. It's always the best way to get to understand and to know a different world. And next to that, I would genuinely push students to also pursue interest, because there's very few people now, younger people, who don't have an interest in technology in a certain shape or form. And what you see, the people who make a career in those digital health companies sometimes are pharmacy students, but who are really, really tech savvy. And then they kind of go and follow a passion in itself next to their pharmaceutical studies or science studies. And that's where these people are being picked up by those digital health companies to be the bridge between the development teams, the technical programmers and developments, and then the actual science and the patients, etc., etc. So it's really, it's very difficult, even in the tech world. It's educational in certain startups completely outside of the digital health. They hire people who didn't even finish their studies and who've been developing since they were 14 and been creating stuff on its own. It's really kind of blending those two worlds together. And I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years going forward to see how that business is going to drive also different types of maybe courses going forward or modules as part of general scientific schooling.
Thank you, Oliver. I see a question in the chat, actually from Ruben from EPSA. This is a question for Mónica because it is related to the regulatory aspect. And Ruben is asking how important it is to get a master. I mean, it means a professional master in addition to a degree in pharmacy, for instance, which is already a master's degree, but an additional degree like you have, Mónica. No, I understood from your CV that you also took this path after your degree. So do you recommend one of these degrees, or you recommend a young person to try to enter into a company first and then to specialize later on?
It's more common to have a, can you hear me? Postgrad. It could be a master, or it could be a course about regulatory information, because in common degrees, pharmacists and chemists, this kind of teaching is not in the career or in the knowledge. So it's preferably to have one before you enter in the industry. But you can choose a master or a course. So it doesn't mean to be very expensive. So it's preferably.
Perfect, thank you. Josse, if you have another question. I have a general question for Daniele. I mean, we actually organized recently another UNICA webinar together with EMA, looking at drug development, special designs, and Josse and Professor Eichler, they were speakers in that webinar, really very advanced, high level. In general, what is your opinion about drug development in this post-COVID era? I mean, will also new opportunities for young people will be open, or you foresee difficulties maybe at some positions? I mean, how is your view, let's say, from the point of view of the labor market in clinical research in the next few years?
Thank you, Luciano. Yeah, so COVID, I think, is going to change maybe the way we do clinical trials as everything else. I think some of the changes that have been introduced with COVID, I think, will remain with us. I mean, the easiness with which you organize this webinar, it's something that you will carry on with you. And I guess in clinical trials, we've been forced to make use of more digital technologies. I mean, Olivier was talking about that, to substitute for physical visits. The patients go to the clinic, have a visit planned by the protocol, which was not possible because of COVID constraints. And now we resort to a different way of doing that visit, using telemedicine, having the patient to call the doctor, have a video interview. I think that was a surrogate that we had to introduce with COVID, and I think some of these novelties will remain with us. So I think it will change a little bit the way we conduct clinical trials. And I think that, and beyond COVID, I think the general trend that we see is that we will see more and more real-world evidence generated, real-world data, and to generate real-world evidence as a way to complement the data we obtain with clinical trials, with also the standard, the gold standard, which is randomized clinical trials. are going to remain with us, but I think the collection of real-world data will increase substantially with the introduction of new technologies, and I think this is something that we'll see will generate and will create also opportunities for young people, from students to work in that area. So I see a big development in that.
Thank you, Daniele. So it's 11:05. Josse, if you agree, then I think it's time to close this session. We can have a 5 minutes break now, and we'll resume very soon with the second session. Of course, I would like to thank very much the 3 speakers of this session for the excellent talks, and they are very welcome to stay also in the second session. But of course, if they're busy, we fully understand that they will leave the webinar now. Thank you very much to Daniele, Oliver, and Mónica. And thank you also for Josse for co-chairing this session with me.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
So 5 minutes break now.